Novo Nordisk, the CEO, set to testify before a Senate committee about the price of popular weight loss drugs. Joining us now with more is Dr. Scott Gottlieb, former FDA Commissioner and a CNBC contributor. And it's good to see you, Doctor. But we just had a previous discussion. I'm slowly becoming just open to anything. Now I'm starting to be open to drug price controls. I don't know anymore what's right and what's wrong. If Bernie makes the point, it costs X Ozempic here in the United States, whatever it was a lot, 14, what is it? You know the number, 1,400 or something, supposedly?
Less than that. It's about 750, the net price.
We're saying, we want to use the highest one we can find to make the argument. So the undiscounted price is 1,400, right? In parts of across the pond, it's $90 a month. Our consumers do deserve less of a disparity. So I'm starting to see that. How do we do it? How do we not hurt innovation? Who's screwing us here? The PBMs, the drug companies? Where's the problem? Where does it lie?
Well, look, these prices have come down substantially. You're seeing substantial discounting in the market, 40, 50%, and they continue to fall. Novo Nordisk missed their estimates last quarter because analysts didn't anticipate the net price reductions that were happening in the marketplace. I think you're going to see continued price reductions. There's no question that a lot of these drugs cost less overseas at the list level. But if you look at the pricing with all the discounts baked in many cases, consumers in programs like Part D are getting a better deal than the pricing in Europe because the European prices advertise a list price. Here, you don't see all the rebating that's happening in the marketplace. Now, that said, these drugs still are cheaper. At least the semaglutide drugs, the Novo Nordisk drugs, are cheaper overseas than they are here in the U.S. in some countries, and I think that's the bugaboo right now on Capitol Hill. But I will just say, I think this hearing right now that Sanders is having today, Senator Sanders is having, is a prelude to these drugs being price negotiated next year by Medicare. Right. Remember, the semaglutide drugs, so Rybelsus, Wegovy, and Ozempic, were approved 7 years, 1 month ago. They're going to be subject to IRA price controls next year. And I think this is a little bit of jawboning on Medicare to try to get Medicare to be more draconian in how they ultimately set those prices. One final point here I'll just make as an aside. Novo got this drug approved before the end of the year, about 7 years ago. I think many drug companies that are looking at year-end approvals now are going to start to push those approvals into the subsequent year because it buys them a whole nother year from these price controls.
It does. And you're not talking about patent protection.
Well, so they come up for price negotiations once they've been on the market for 7 years. So why be on the market for 7 years and 1 month if you could be on the market for six years and 11 months? So you're going to see a lot of November, December drug approvals get pushed into the following year by the drug makers.
How much of this is Novo Nordisk as a European company, and they're going to come at this a little differently than an American company would?
Yeah, look, I think that's some of it. I think Lilly probably has more relationships on Capitol Hill to keep David Ricks out of the crosshairs here. But I think more of this is because Congress knows this drug is going to be subject to price regulation under the IRA next year, and they're trying to put some advanced pressure on Medicare to do a little bit more in terms of trying to bring that cost down. So that's what I think this is about.
When you see Senator Sanders say that this pill costs $2 to make, why don't you sell it for $2? Does he really believe that, or is he? Do they know better? Because these people lie. Senator Warren, when she comes out, she talks about Kroger's profits. She knows full well that she wasn't comparing apples and apples, and they demagogue it. They do it on purpose.
Well, look, I think he may really believe that.
That's what I was asking you.
I think most people understand that you're pricing these drugs to recoup the investments and the high cost of capital in this industry. But what they say to me when I talk to them privately is, look, the margins are still very high. This is still a very wealthy industry. We think that you could lower the prices, reduce the margins, and you're still going to have an incentive to invest in R&D. But look, I see on the venture capital side, and you know this as well, if you're running a multi-strat venture capital firm, I work at one right now, and you look across your portfolio, in many cases the returns look better in some of the other sectors, and that capital is very fluid and can get allocated away very quickly. You see what happened in med tech. Venture capital has largely pulled out of medical device innovation because the returns weren't there, the pricing was driven down, the approvals got harder, and that capital shifted into other markets.
Let me ask you about just GLP-1s more generally, which is it's possible that in success with these drugs that they're going to actually eliminate other drugs, right? Like people are going to not be taking statins, the way they do. And what did you say?
Everything.
And everything. Alzheimer's drugs.
Diabetes.
So I say this because of just the cascade effect on the rest of the pharmaceutical industry in terms of their profits and other component parts. The question is, how much do you think of these drugs as super drugs? Do you actually think that's true? And what is the risk? Because there's, by the way, a lot of people that are watching our broadcast who keep, I get emails all the time. Should I be taking this stuff? What's going on? Is there a risk of thyroid cancer people talk about? Can you just speak more broadly about these things?
Look, there are risks in the labels, but these drugs have been on the market. These compounds have been on the market for a very long time. This is as old as the iPhone. It was first introduced when the iPhone was introduced. So we understand the profile very well. At the higher doses over a prolonged period of times, we have less experience. Those are the doses that are being used to achieve the weight loss. But if you're properly indicated for these drugs, if you have a high BMI and you have other comorbidities, these drugs are providing a substantial benefit in terms of cardiovascular risk reduction.
What about the Upper East Side crowd, if you will?
I think that,
if you look at the concentration of where these drugs are being sold, there's a huge concentration there, and I would actually imagine the BMIs on the Upper East Side are actually lower than the rest of the country.
Yeah, I think you're perhaps over-influenced by the microcosm in which you're circulating. I think that the excessive utilization or the inappropriate utilization on the margin is truly on the margin. If you look at the average BMI when Novo reports it or Lilly reports it of patients who are on those drugs, it's quite high. I think a lot of the excessive utilization is probably with the compounding drugs, which I have real concerns around. I don't think those drugs are properly formulated. I don't think they're delivering the same therapeutic benefit. You gain more of the risks and less of the benefits of those drugs. But I think in terms of the branded drugs, while there is inappropriate utilization on the margin, and I hear about it and you hear about it, I think that really is a small portion of the overall market.